All right, I'm just gonna get started a minute early because I have a couple of housekeeping items I want to go through real quick. Welcome one and all. My name is Jocelyn Ireland. I'm the conference chair of SUNYLA 2020. One quick note, the lunch for the lunch social, the annual meeting and the EBSCO presentation has changed this afternoon. You should have all received an email from Logan Rath with the updated link, and the Google spreadsheet with all the conference links has been updated. But what we're all here for, of course, is the keynote. I wish we could have all gathered to hear our esteemed presenter in person, but we are so glad to have Kaetrena Davis Kendrick join us virtually. Kaetrena earned her MSLS from the historic Clark Atlanta University School of Library Information Studies. Her research interests include professionalism, ethics, racial and ethnic diversity in the LIS field, and the role of communities of practice in practical academic librarianship. She is co-editor of the Small and Rural Academic Library, Leveraging Resources and Overcoming Limitations, and author of 2 annotated bibliographies. In addition to her research and writing, Kendrick also offers professional development opportunities and organizational consultations designed to energize employee morale and promote empathetic leadership in North American libraries. In her daily and long-term work, Kendrick has transformed library programs, services, and culture via creativity, leadership, and advocacy. In 2019, Kendrick was named Association of College and Research Libraries Academic Research Librarian of the Year. Kendrick is Dean-elect of Ida Jane Dacus Library and Louise Pettis Archives and Special Collections at Winthrop University. She's expected to begin her new role in July 2020. We will be leaving 10 minutes for Q&A at the end of the presentation. Attendees, please enter your questions through the Q&A area of Zoom, but please feel free to engage with your fellow attendees through the chat. Kaetrena has requested I provide a verbal 5-minute warning. So without further delay, I give you Kaetrena Davis Kendrick.
Morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Jocelyn. Just as a quick reminder, please pronounce my name Kaetrena. It's a common mispronunciation. But I am very thankful to be able to meet with you all today virtually to talk with you about what I've been doing for my career. You'll see in front, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my, I'm going to see if I can turn off my video here. So give me just a second. So you'll see in front of you my mission, which is to inspire authentic collegiality and to promote well-being, share the gifts of creativity, and cultivate empathetic, engaged leadership in the workplace. That has been my crystallizing mission in these last few years, and particularly the last 3 or 4 years. And I want to share it with you, and you'll get a glimpse of how in part I have been doing that. So, just really quickly, this is the titles for it. So just so you all know, the New Heart of Librarianship, how I've been inspiring diversity and inclusivity through creativity. And today I'm going to share with you how I've been leveraging creativity, what that means for me, and how I've been leveraging it in my daily practice of librarianship, and how I've been linking that idea of creativity to, or that philosophy of creativity, to diversity, inclusion, and access. You just heard that I'm Dean-elect of, I'm moving to a new position. So a lot of these things were implemented at my previous position at Medford Library at a University of South Carolina library system. So I'll share with you some outcomes, and then I'll end and conclude today with some concerns and guidelines in terms of promoting and implementing and applying long-term ideas of equity, diversity, and inclusion. So what is creativity? Well, Julia Cameron, who has written a book called, and a workbook series called The Artist's Way, defines creativity as an experience. For me, creativity is an opportunity to improve. And so therefore, it's action oriented. So let me share with you about my work in creativity in librarianship and what my impetus was. Why did I start this philosophy? When I came to my previous position, and before that, when I think about how I approach libraries, this is kind of the image I have in my mind. Abundance, things happening, aesthetically pleasing, people go through, it's a garden in a sense. And when I arrived at my previous institution, this is what I saw. So there was no activity there. Although there is activity in the desert, there's no denying it, in comparison to what I perceived activity was in the library. By contrast, this meant there was no activity in the library for me. And I felt like there were literal tumbleweeds flowing. And so my question was, where is everybody? Where is everybody? And so my goal was, why wasn't anybody in the library? And this is how it would look. So my first 6 months there, it looked kind of like this. People would come in, print something and leave. Come in, use our facilities and leave. And so eventually it started looking like this. So how did I get that computer bank to look like this? How did we get people to come in and play in our library and congregate and socialize? How do we get people to stand at a whiteboard and figure out words just because, with no technology in our library? How do we get people who started seeing themselves as researchers in our library in those last few years while I was there? How do we get people who aren't supposed to be arts and crafters to be arts and crafters and spend time in our library? And of course, how do we get them to do the things that we perceive that people will be doing in our library, i.e. studying, reading, things like that? How do we get professors talking about their scholarship? And who you see in that in attendance are a mix of students and faculty and even administration. The woman with shades on is one of our administrators. So people come into the library, and this is Dr. Pat Lawrence. Pat Lawrence came and talked about censorship in our library. He did that as a keynote for Banned Books Week this past year, past academic year. How did I get all the way to Italy from Lancaster? Who you see in front of you with the scarf on is Dr. Dana Lawrence. We have 3 Lawrences in our we had 3 Lawrences in our English department, and she was one of the Lawrences. And the woman in the white jacket is one of our nursing faculty, and we're in the front making our wish. I'm still hoping I'll get to go back. I threw my penny in there. That means you're supposed to go back. So maybe I'll get to go back to Italy soon. And there we are writing. Those are our students who went with us. How did I get to Italy? And those students engaged in our library too. How did we do that? We are a small library. We are a commuter campus. We have no dorms on campus. People drive in from the surrounding counties. We were serving primarily Lancaster County, Kershaw County, Chester County, some of York County. These are in the northern part of South Carolina, in a rural area, in a mill/factory town. We had a history of, like I said, a historic non-engagement, very limited staff. When I came on board, there was a library director and me, and then eventually got another librarian. But then in 2015, we lost our library director, and we still did. And even though I've gone now, they're down to 1 librarian and a kaleidoscope of temporary staff. So we have time constraints of practice and service because the librarians who were there were also on tenure track. So I was moving toward tenure and eventually got tenure, promoted in tenure. But when you're on that path, that means you have practice, service, and scholarship. We had no strategic or succession plans. And keep in mind, we eventually lost our library director, and eventually that leadership position is still not been resolved. So there was no formal leadership, and we have no money. There's no money. So how did we do all that? So these are some of the things we did. First of all, when we think about creativity, you can include people. Creativity, you must include. That's the great thing. In order to improve, you have to include people. And so my inspiration was, first of all, you remember my question is, where are the people? So my inspiration is, welcome. This space is for you. The space is for you. So how did we do that? The first thing I did was I literally created a program to say, show your face in the library. And so we asked people to bring old coffee mugs. And at that point, we had a student government association president who happened to have connections with a restaurant. And so we gathered all these mugs, and the student that student took all these mugs and got them professionally cleaned at the steam cleaned at the restaurant and brought them back. And then we had an event where they literally came and we served coffee, and people just picked mugs. They picked another mug, and we had snacks. And everyone came out to that. And while we were offering these snacks and these hot drinks, we asked them about feedback for some signage and things like that. And so here you see students are voting. Another thing we did was I started this event called Study Snacks. And here is where you need to know that creativity includes failure. And so this is my first iteration of Study Snacks. You can see I have my quote unquote fancy labels and neatly created bags, and they're closed and they're full of delicious snacks like honey buns and what else do we put in there? Doritos and things like that. And guess what? Those things sat there. No one picked them up. Very little people picked them up. They would look at them and walk off. They would open the bags, close them, and leave them there. They would ask us, how much are they? And what that show told me was things had not been done for the student body. And so what I did was, we had those snacks for days. Now, Rebecca and I pilfered honey buns and offered them another way throughout the year, but they did not go out in these bags. But what we did was we learned from that. We work with student government, and you can see as I go through these photos, now we have see-through bags and students are picking them up. And what we did was we just created different snacks so students can see inside the bags. We had signage and everything. There are different sorts of snacks. So they didn't want high sugar snacks. Even we had gummies, and at some point sometimes we have fruit. And this is what happens now every time we've had this event since then. We always run out. We try to offer it on the reading week, the week before final exams for each semester. And about no matter how many we make, we run out about Wednesday or Thursday. I think we've gotten to Friday once in the time that we've done it. And we would have done it, but with the pandemic, we were planning to do it this past spring. But this is the latest picture from last year. So every time. So we also created signage. I started branding the library. I started creating new spaces so people know you're welcome in the library. Some places are loud, but we do have places that are more quiet for you. So there's a space for you in the library. We have certain events. We have creative ventures where you can create things. And we have places where we offer really quickly something called Mindful Mondays. Again, a space for you to come and not do anything. So I think libraries, we often perceive them as places where people come and do things. But I think it's also important that we offer spaces where people don't have to do anything in the library. They can just be. We also created our signage in terms of welcome to spaces for you. I leveraged the Libraries Transform. At that time, ALA was using Libraries Transform, and so I created and used that campaign to create signages of welcome and things you can do in the library because you need a place to study or meet or nap. No judgment. I mean, again, we were trying to engage people's idea of what our library now meant for them. And of course, the things that you expect that library workers can do. We help also with your work. We can do that too. We still do those things. Oftentimes, creativity requires kaleidoscopic thinking. And so people like to take things from the library. And I believe that librarians often forget that they have a locus of control. And creativity, to me, also means engaging your locus of control, what belongs to you, and keeping that. And so people like to take things and try to take things from the library, try to take space, so on and so forth. And someone in the archives wanted this, and we all probably, everyone I think knows what this is. This is the old card catalog, and they wanted to take it. And I was like, no, this is now our pop-up tea shop. Okay, this is our pop-up tea shop. And we place different teas in there, and they have rules about how to keep the place clean. We don't offer, people have to bring their own beverage containers. That's how we keep down on waste. And we offer sweeteners, and people come to use it. And originally, we were just going to offer this in the cold season months. But we tried to shut it down in the summer, and our people would say no, they want it, I guess, because maybe they were too chilly in their offices with the AC in the summertime. So we end up now offering it all year round. And you'll see, again, when I say that it's an opportunity to improve, you saw our first sign. I went back and I updated our signage and our branding for the pop-up tea shop. So we don't just do things and then leave them. We come back and we try to improve signage, look at processes again, things like that. We also, in terms of making sure people are included, we had to create more seating. When I first came to Medford Library, our top floor was co-opted by the Academic Success Center, and they eventually got their own space. And so we were able to reclaim that space, and we created new seating areas as soon as we could. The thing is, once you get your space back, reclaim it for the people who need it, and for us, that was the students. And so we created seating area. This is our quiet area. We have whiteboards that we created, and you see that work on the walls, that student artwork. And they're used right away. As soon as we started offering these spaces, students use them, and they maintain that quiet area and enforce it on their own. So that's, again, another way that you include people in your space. Give them the opportunity to make the space what it is. So when we give orientations, we let the students know this is the quiet area, and you enforce quiet. It doesn't mean you don't talk to the librarians or the library workers and if you need help enforcing the policy, but we have them make sure that they have their own locus of control in the space that is theirs. This is their library space, and we just manage the moving parts of it. And this is another seating area that we created. Again, you see student art on the walls, and it goes into the quiet zone in the back as you move to the back there. We also have individual seating here. So you see, we try to give a lot of different sorts of seating. And you see here, remember at the beginning when I showed you that mug event where we asked students to vote? Well, this is the art on the walls here are a result of that voting. So we like to, again, we can't include people and then don't show them the evidence of their inclusion. We complete the circle by saying, you voted on this, and now there's evidence that we were listening. These are the things you said you wanted us to put up. And so including people means you close that loop when you ask for feedback. You act on it, and so they can see it whenever possible. We also, I'm just showing you here that we have lots of different seating for that, what I call the ambi. We have introverts and extroverts, and I call this the ambivert seating. So for the students who want to kind of peek around and talk to someone, but also still need that semblance of privacy or quiet. And here we have, we also updated our group study rooms with technology, so that when I first got here to that space, these rooms had no whiteboards, no television. Students can now come in and write on the boards, and they can hook up their own PCs to that monitor there if they need to practice. So in this way, it's not just a study room, but they can practice their presentations if they need to. And these are all reserved. And we also updated our conference room. So this is how it used to look. And again, people kept saying that we needed something when we talk and have these meetings, so we can hook up our own devices. And so we were able to meet that need. Again, closing the loop, this space is for you. We want you in the library. We hear what you need, and where we can, we're working to meet that mandate. We also ask for feedback often. Sometimes we ask for feedback on things that we know we can't help. And also we ask for feedback on programs, like, we're going to do this program. What do you want? What cereal do you want? We asked them for feedback. We were thinking about buying a gaming system. I don't game, but they do. So I asked them what they want, and we have approval. And we ended up getting the Xbox One. So again, closing the loop. And we also, just like all libraries, are concerned about how students are spending their money for course books, so we can figure out how we can move forward in getting textbooks or open educational resources. So late last year, we started asking these questions so we can begin making the case for our book budget. And we also say, hey, spend our money. This kind of cool. This is cool. I'm showing you this because we say, hey, spend our book money. Tell us what you want. And then you see that some of the things we already have. So this was a great way for them to tell us what you want, and then for us to say, hey, we already have what you want, so now you can go check it out. So that was a really great feedback cycle. We were really happy about this one. And we just created a new food zone right in March. We were on our way to creating a food zone we can eat, because students were mandating. We are the de facto student center on campus because of all the things we've been doing. And so students now bring their food in, and the unofficial mandate is they want to come in here and be able to eat. And we had to create a space for that. And so we created that space, and we said, hey, what do you want us to call it? Unfortunately, this is one of those times when we did not go with the student mandate to call it the Meat Palace. We think there was some voting irregularities there. So I think they're going to call it the Lansing Library Lounge. But, we were looking at Area 476. Area 476 is our campus address. 476 is our numerical address on our street. Another thing we do to include people in terms of making sure they feel supported is at the end of every year, we ask them to write encouraging messages on a whiteboard and leave it. And students often do that. And so that rides in tandem with our Mindful Mondays. We're working to make sure that they know they have support, and that this is, the library encourages you, not only us, but other students are coming in and thinking of you as well as they're doing their studies. So in terms of creativity and diversity, my inspiration was see and hear yourself at the library. See and hear yourself at the library. So sometimes we do cultural events. One year we did something for St. Patrick's Day. Another time, these are our creative ventures. So about once or twice a semester, we do what's called a creative venture. And here we see everyone comes to these events. We have faculty. What you see here, some of these folks are faculty, some of these folks are students, some of these folks are community members. The person in the red sweater is our dean. And this was our super spring event. They just came and created hero-themed magnets. And some people decided that they would go outside of the idea of superheroes, and they went and found pictures of their own, of people who they perceived as heroes that aren't necessarily heroes. Like I think the dean, like if you watch The Walking Dead, he liked Michonne, and he just created a magnet of Michonne. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the person's name incorrectly. I apologize, but the woman who wields a sword in The Walking Dead. So everyone comes to these events. Our students come to these events. This is our Sugar Scrub event. We held it twice last year because it was just so popular. People kept coming and making things over and over again. They made more than 1, 2, or 3. And so we did it twice. We also, this is something, again, with failure. I like to pepper in. Not everything goes great. I just like to try certain things. One of the ways diversity is represented is through music. And so Spotify, you can create a free account through Spotify. So I would just make monthly playlists and announce who was on the playlist every year. So I did it for a year to see if it would work. But it was just an opportunity for people to be exposed to different music if they so decided to, through Medford Library's account. They were on Spotify. Here, the person in the burgundy shirt is Zach. Zach has been working with us since 2011, before I came. And in terms of seeing oneself in the library, this includes seeing yourself as a librarian. And Zach eventually got his degree from the University of South Carolina in Columbia, and he's still working with us, and he has his degree in this. And we brought him along to a conference, and he presented at a conference about his mentoring through the library. So when we say see yourself at the library, it doesn't just mean in the building, but perhaps even in our profession. We also offer, of course, diversity through our collection development, and we do that through different ways. I did it through creating an exhibit series for every academic year. So we start, this one is called Memoirs at Medford, but how we would do that is, so sometimes I would do something in tandem. So for instance, with Black History Month, I would go and get their, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. They have a theme every year. And so for that year, it was African Americans in Times of War. So what I did was I gathered memoirs of African Americans who were veterans or in the military leaders. And those were the books for that exhibit for February of that year. So you can overlay things. So think of ways to overlay events. And also think of ways to do that throughout the year. That's just one way I did it, but I would offer different people in different exhibits all the time. Another way I showcase things is through something I did called Continental Medford. That was the last 2 years ago, 1819. So there are 7 continents and there are 7 academic months of the regular academic year. So for every month, I would showcase the peoples, cultures, languages, geographies, weathers of a continent. And where I could, I would overlay it with a historical month. So if I could overlay something with Asian Pacific Heritage Month or something like that, I would. But really, but I sometimes would just do it, like for Antarctica was January. So it depends on how you would like to do it. There's so many ways to do it, and that's where your creativity comes in. And of course, just in general, we continue to do our collection development, not only gathering different facets, but also decolonizing our collection where we can, and ensuring that there are different levels and spaces to access for different readers accessing our collection. So not just thinking about word-heavy books. Some people enter reading through graphic novels, and we're here to make sure that people, again, you see yourself in the library through this collection. There's a point of access for you and the way that you engage with literature, however that may be. Another thing is we also showcased our AV collection. So we had a pop-up movie. This was the one for the in March 2020. Would have been something, we were going to show one of these movies in March. One of the things when you're thinking about diversity in the collection, think about what you're looking at here. For the most part, all of these movies have a person of color as protagonists. So automatically we are decentering the norm protagonist here. And as you can see, people vote. And by the way, the votes that you see here are about the same number of voting, and we had about another month to go before voting was complete. And so people voted the same rate, but we need to really be thinking about who we're centering and who we're not centering when we are offering up opportunities to view items in the collection. But one way I do that is just decenter, just center other protagonists, because we have stories too, and they're often not centered. And like I said, people will vote for them. And so the idea here is, if you think about it, when we think about diversity, if I go into a bookstore and see a bunch of magazines, generally they have Caucasian women on the cover. And it's likely that I will pick up one of those items, even as a woman of color, but it is less likely that a woman who is not a Caucasian woman will pick up, say, Essence magazine or anything like that, or Crown mag, for instance, and take that home and read it, even though it has the same information. So the idea here is that whiteness is a placeholder for everyone, but this is an opportunity for us to kind of recenter other protagonists and normalize that without saying anything. Just vote for the movie that you want to see and we'll play it. We also have spaces in our library for people who are quote unquote non-traditional students, although I think that we're quickly becoming traditional students. Our non-traditional students are our traditional students. A lot of our students have children and they would come in and the children wouldn't have anything to do while the students were working. And so we have a juvenile collection now, and it's on the first floor. And you can see that students can come over, pick out books, play with items, plushies if they wanted to. And then also we promote our diversity of our collections through our website. These are some of the headers. And so if you click on those headers as they come up, they'll take you to books by those authors in our collection. We also show, when we do Watch a Banned Book, I was really intentional about showing items that people don't necessarily think of, but are banned books. So we showed like Water for Chocolate, We've invited, as I mentioned earlier, we invited people to come speak about censorship and what that means. Dr. Lawrence happens to be censorship and what it means, what things mean to be offensive happens to be an area of study for him. And so he came and talked about it this past September. And then we offer a banned book film series. So I gather books that have been banned and adapted to film. And then we have 3 films that week, and people can come watch them. And that's in addition to our display. And we also, again, showcase diversity, and we don't shy away from topics that are, I don't want to say controversial, but that make people uncomfortable, I say. And we don't shy away from that. When Ava DuVernay made her 13th available for free to watch, we created a program and invited people to come, and had a forum after the screening of that film. We also have what's called a library of things, and this is about access. So people were asking us for things that we had, but we weren't able to check out in an effective way. So I said, well, let's just make these things check outable through a library of things. And so now we have games there, which students do play. I think there's a group of students who are coming in every day. I think they had their own contest going on, but they were having fun. And this is something that we do also during our orientation. We bring the games to orientation and we say, hi, these things are for you. So it's another way for us to introduce the library without, and give them something to do during orientation. That checkerboard thing you see is also one of ours as well. So we bring those and engage with our students, our newest students, right away at orientation. And we also offer them a little bit of swag, a little bit of snack, because orientation is a long day for some of them, and often they're only just served lunch. And so this is, little snacks to keep them going with some information about the library. When they arrive on campus, this is something that I started in 2016. I still know because our student government association or our student life didn't really have a welcome week event. And I knew that this is a common thing in lots of campuses, but for whatever reason, it wasn't happening on our campus. So I created a welcome week event in 2016. And that turned into WonderCon, which is now literally we just decided to pivot and create, I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of a con, but like a fan convention. And we call it WonderCon. And it's a 3-day event, has 4 tracks, game, read, time, tech. And we offer opportunities, self-contained opportunities in each of these tracks. And you'll see here, again, creativity is an opportunity to improve. So that was our first logo. I went back and I updated the logo. And we continue to do these. And we did it last year. We have magnets that people pick, and they can pick up a set of magnets. They can come in and color. We have games. Last year since we bought the Xbox, we had a Forza tournament, and students can do their race car thing. Those are students picking up the magnets. And our faculty and staff come into the library during that time, and they're browsing the books. And students are working on, we introduce them to the creative ventures. So we have a creative venture at least one of those days. And so that's an opportunity for them to understand that, hey, we're going to be doing this throughout the year. These things are happening throughout the year as well. So in terms of creativity and access, my inspiration is always let's work together. Again, it was just me and my colleague, Rebecca. So I had to figure out who's going to help us do these things. And sometimes that happened on campus and sometimes it didn't. In fact, some of my early work happened with other colleagues. So I started with a community of practice called the K-Pop Collective. And my colleague, Dr. Crystal Anderson, and we're both interested and follow Korean popular culture. And so we started working together to create a digital humanities project called the K-Pop Collective. And a lot of the work that I've done at Lancaster comes out of my practice with the K-Pop Collective. So this is K-Popiana, one of our first digital humanities projects, which is the co-location of music from various Korean popular music artists. And from there, I learned, I'll just create. When I asked, how did I get to Italy? This is how I got to Italy. a colleague, Dr. Dana Lawrence said, Kaetrena, I'm going to Italy, I'm taking my students, and I have to figure out a way for them. I want them to write a journal, but I want it to be online, and they have to hit certain marks because I need them to be able to write, and I want them to be able to take pictures, and I need them to be able to post it online, and that'll be their final project. And I said, oh, I can do that. Do you know the librarians are digital humanists? Well, you are. I said, oh, I can do that. And so I learned I took what I learned from the K-pop collective and I work at K-Popiana, and I created metadata and processes for the Child Lancaster project. This project is still up, and students had to take a certain number of pictures. I told them what the metadata fields needed to be. They had to write their information and submit it to me, and I would just post it for them. And so, but what they learned was how to write for the web. They learned what metadata is, and they learned other things as well. So these types of things will help them as they move forward in their work. They will know how to write for different, not only how to write, but how to write in different aspects, not only for a classroom, not only for a written report, but for the digital environment. So that's a skill that they have. And also when we talk about librarianship and the invisibility of librarianship, my work was made visible through my interactions with them for this project. They now knew, oh, this is another thing that librarians do. Yes, because they tell me I check books in and out all day, but they didn't know until then that, oh, they create exhibits, they create points of access. This is called metadata. It is information about information. This is going to help me. These things are going to be up. I can show my work now. And by the way, this is still up. So if they want to show someone, yes, I've written for the web, they can go and show them Child Lancaster. From there, I went even further and I created Lancer Scholar Square. Because we are so small, even though the University of South Carolina has Scholar Commons, our library is so small that we don't have the labor pool to engage in Scholar Commons. But I wanted to gather what I call ephemeral research. Ephemeral research are things that are scholarly, but that don't necessarily get published or go to the wayside, but are part of the scholarly record. Things like poster sessions, those presentations that you create and then go nowhere, things like that. I wanted to gather that ephemeral information and put it in one place to showcase the record. And so this is Lancer Scholar Square, and I created metadata for that, and I asked students and faculty to submit to Lancer Scholar Square, and they have done that. So it's a record, and again, this is a persistent link, and students can showcase what they have been doing. And even though I'm no longer there, this is still there, and the student can access their record and show, I have presented, here's where it is. This is more about curation, but it helps us prepare for preservation should Medford Library ever become a part of Scholar Commons. So in here, we're thinking about preparing. It's not about what we can't do, it's about what we can do to prepare for the things should we be able to do them. And that is what creativity is to me, an opportunity to improve. This was launched at the Celebration of Productive Research and Scholarship, which we did with the collaboration of the Research Club. And so we continue to collaborate with them, and they eventually, they do it every other year. And the second year, they actually had the event in the library. And so these are photos with all the students' research hanging up in our library, and everyone coming to see the person in the green vest is, again, our dean coming to check us out, what we're doing. And all of these things were scanned and added to our Lancer Scholar Square. We also have worked with our counseling center to bring in the animal therapy dogs. And another thing, going back to the Library of Things, we have nursing simulation support items in our Library of Things, and we did that through collaborating with our nursing faculty, not only on campus, but at a local community college. We have a joint program, a joint nursing program with a local community college, and these items were donated to us from not only our team, but from nurses at the local community college, just because we asked. We've also worked with the Office of Admissions. We've worked with Early Start. We have a curriculum that we do with them every year during their Early Start program, where we introduce the students to research and citation skills and technology. We've worked with Career Services, Again, this is about collaboration. We work with Student Government Association and other student organizations. We work with the archives and the Academic Success Center, counseling and disability services, of course, individual faculty members in our community practice, and of course, our local community college faculty. So it really is about working with others. Who can we work with to engage a sense of creativity to keep things improving in the library? So is what we're doing working? Well, we have a dedicated programs budget. We didn't have that until 2013, 14, and now we consistently have a dedicated programs budget that has never dwindled. It's not a lot, but we tend to get more because we have the data showing that people are attending our events and that we're keeping butts in seats. Even when our enrollment is down, our butts in seats, our seat count has remained relatively stable. We have a stable collection development budget. We have sustained collaborative relationships that we go back to every year, that people invite us to come in every year. Again, we have upticks in seat and gate counts, and there are upticks in previously underused call numbers because we've been able to manage our collections and pull things out, like creating that juvenile section so things are easier to find. We also created an oversized collection so those items are easier to find and easier to access. We pulled out our AV materials so those items are easier to find and easier to access. But why is EDI work so challenging? This is a lot of work, and remember, it was just me and one other colleague, and like I said, we have a kaleidoscope of people working with us in terms of temporary. They were all temporary staff and students. Some of the things that come up is the persistent whiteness of the field, and whiteness hovers around 87 to 88% Caucasian and ALA membership, depending on where you look. But I used the ALA membership from 2017. And SNR Ithaca in a report that looks at library leadership shows that it's even a more significant racial striation in terms of favoring whiteness in library leadership positions. So as you move further up in library land, the whiteness is even more significant. When I look at low morale of Black, Indigenous, and people of color and their low morale experiences, about half of the enabling systems, the additional enabling systems, are related to race and diversity, including diversity rhetoric, white privilege, white supremacy, and racism. There's a neutrality trope of libraries that continues into the 21st century, and that we are open to all. And then there's this issue of culture, what I call library nice, in that we are really concerned about looking like we're nice to people, and we're really more concerned about friendliness rather than competence in the profession. And so you start hearing things about who's a good fit and the good fit narrative, and she's a good librarian, and often what that means is I like that person. I can hang out with them socially, and that means they're a good librarian, rather than this person does excellent work, and this is the impact that they've made in terms of their work, and this is the confidence that they bring to the position. We must acknowledge the existence of systems that make the implementation of equity, diversity, and inclusion possible in our libraries. And I think here, I like to go ahead and acknowledge that not everybody in our profession wants this to be. A lot of people came to the library profession as a second career. There's tropes about what librarianship is, and that means coming to a place that's quiet and safe and nothing's going on, and this will be the place where I can just help people in this ambiguous sort of way. And really, when you're helping people, it needs to be, in what way are you helping people? And that means that there's work to be done in order to help people. So I think that we need to acknowledge that not everybody in our profession wants to do equity, diversity, and inclusion work. And the sooner we reckon with that, the further along the path we can do, and focus on those who do want to do this work and get it done. We need to recognize our privileges and biases, the places that we come from. I come from a place of privilege. Even as an African-American woman living in the South, I still have a certain privilege. I'm part of a very few, little amount of people. I have a master's degree. I recognize that. I come from a place where everybody in my family, they're teachers. So that's a place of privilege for me. I've traveled, that's a place of privilege for me. And I've done that even from a very young age. So even as a person of color, I have biases and privileges that I need to acknowledge as I do this work. You need to recognize that the historic systems that we have current repercussions. And so discussions about, I wasn't there when this happened, we still benefit from systems that were put in place many, many years ago. We need to acknowledge it. We also need to acknowledge intersectionality, which basically puts people who have one or more identities that could be marginalized. It erases one in order that the other may move forward. And so the fullness of EDI work and the fullness of racism, the fullness of sexism, things like that, is never really fully acknowledged because of intersectionality, because one identity has to be given up in order to privilege another. We must work, and that means informing yourselves. Perhaps you've seen in Twitter and your social media feeds the exhaustion that our colleagues, BIPOC colleagues, are going through because they're being asked to educate others about what's happening in terms of police brutality and Black Lives Matter. Inform yourself, prepare yourself, and as you do this work, beware weaponizing your feelings because you are coming from a place of comfort. Think about what you want to look, what things should be long-term for the improvement of the profession. Remember, creativity is about improvement. And my goal, I hope your goal is to improve our profession. So please do your work. Jan Levon says, do your work, do your work. Then we must go into redress. And all these things aren't, one after the other. These things should be happening in tandem, perhaps at the same time. Offer allyship and learn what that means before you offer it. Be about action, and again, be clear about what your action is going to be and why you're doing it and how you're going to do it, and be accountable for whatever it is that you do. When we talk about diversity rhetoric, which is in low morale enabling system, the problem with that is diversity rhetoric is so obtuse that there's no accountability. So it is literally language saying nothing. And so we can say that we did something or that we're doing something, but there's no accountability or benchmarking. And that is the cognitive dissonance that a lot of BIPOC colleagues have. We see these statements, yet nothing's being done at the table. Nothing's being done. If I speak out about what happened to me in terms of poor treatment or something, then I'm the victim. I'm not the victim. Somebody else is the victim. So we need transparency in how we're meeting these benchmarks, how we're moving forward, and there needs to be a commitment, again, that goes beyond rhetoric into action, into reflection, and we should be reflecting, act, reflect, pivot if you need to, act again, keep going. Remember, creativity is about improvement. We don't stop, we keep going, we keep trying to improve, and all these things occur. Accountability, transparency, commitment. You're committed to the long term. We keep trying.
This is their 5-minute warning.
Thank you so much. And the last thing here is connect. And one of the things I mentioned at the beginning, I'm about empathetic leadership. Empathetic leadership means understanding how people are feeling. It doesn't mean you have to feel the same way. It just means you understand how people are feeling and you can connect with them from that feeling. Everyone has had the same feeling, even if you don't know why someone is feeling that way. Communicate often and offer support. Engage, don't turn away just because you're uncomfortable. Don't turn away when, this is an opportunity for leaning in right here. Often it's used as a resilience narrative. And for here, I really am gonna say lean in. If you feel uncomfortable, that's the time when you ask more questions. Ask, or go read, go find out more. Advocate, advocate, advocate. And here, advocate not just for the concept of libraries, but for the people working in them. Libraries are about people working in the libraries. We privilege people coming into our libraries and we discount ourselves. So advocate, advocate for yourself, advocate for the people working in the library, the people with all the identities working in your libraries, the people with all the challenges seen and unseen working in your libraries. Advocate for them and go through continuing education as you need to. Not as you want to, as you need to. So there are some requirements for creativity. You need engaged and supportive leadership, and that doesn't necessarily mean a formal leader. I am a proponent of informal leadership. This is all the things I've been doing without a title since 2012. The position I'm moving forward to will be my first formal leadership position in my career. So when I say supportive leadership, you can support yourself and engage with yourself and find other informal leaders or formal leaders who can help you regardless of your title. Start with yes and scale, scale, scale. We do not start with no. I start with yes, and I'll back my way into a no, and it has to be a very hard no. Funding is great. There's different ways to fund. Be as creative as you can. Do you really need $5,000? Can you do it for $2,000? Do we need all that stuff? We never have any we hadn't had any technology in our library, but we were able to get feedback and all these things. We are very flexible, and failure is okay. And we also give a lot of reflection on what worked and what didn't. Creativity caveats. Perfectionism versus excellence. I strive for excellence. I cannot be perfect. I am about development over competition. I do not worry about what other people are doing. I am trying to develop myself and the library, and that has worked for us. Vocational awe versus progress. If we have vocational awe, we cannot critique our profession. If you cannot critique your profession or what you can do, you cannot move forward. Resilience narratives, which place the onus on people, of system failures on people. My goal is finding solutions in the system. I'm trying to figure out where in the system can we find a solution that engages the system that needs to take over this problem. Low morale versus empathy. I'm going to go with empathy on this one. Empathy is the antidote to low morale. It doesn't fix everything, but when people feel heard, hearing people is a big deal. And job precarity versus advocacy. Again, thinking about people working in the library, not just privileging people working who are coming into the library. It has to be more holistic. And thinking about libraries as places of engagement rather than just concepts or buildings. It's a process. Creativity is a process. It promotes kaleidoscopic thinking. I'm always thinking in 22 areas all the time. It favors excellence, not perfection. It emphasizes effort and supports curiosity. And it builds workplace and user trust. It rejects hoarding and shows improvement. So, where's your heart? These are some books that have helped me through my process. The Artist's Way, Brene Brown, I thought it was just me, but it isn't, which is a great opportunity for you to learn the links between shame and perfectionism, which lots of librarians, as I've gone through my work on low morale, they have issues with perfectionism, which lead to vocational awe and things like that. Lead Yourself First, Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And I'm now currently reading Moral Courage by Rushworth Kidder for better insight on ethical decision-making when things are not, when our values are put in front of us, and what are we really going to do? This is really helpful in terms of the pandemic and how libraries are responding to coronavirus. So that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening.
Wow, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. The chat has just been filled with appreciation and just craving all the suggestions and creative ideas that you provided.
Thank you all. Thank you. Let's see. So I have 7 questions here. I'm going to go in order, if that's okay, Jocelyn.
Yeah. All
right. So first, I love your renewers group on Facebook. Oh, thank you. So I have a renewers group on Facebook for those of you dealing with facing with low morale. Now the question, do you pay for the supplies personally? No. Get reimbursed or donations for student group? No, we have a, I created a budget. I have a budget. We have a programs budget. Now, the way that process at that institution worked was some things I had to pay for personally and then submit receipts immediately and I get reimbursed. But some things we would just, like for food items or whatever, we would just order them through Amazon and they would just pay them. We had an account and it would be paid through the business office. So it depended on things. And I think the next question was, how did you fund snack bags, pop-up tea station? Same thing. So it was through our programs funding. So some things we had to pay for, like I think I paid for the tea and item. It was some things also came through Amazon. So it depended. It depended on what I did, or what I had to buy. But some things I would just pay for personally and just submit a receipt automatically. So when I say pay for personally, for me, I mean pay for personally, knowing that I would get paid back through my programs budget funding. I hope that makes sense. Pop-up movie, do you get public showcase licensing? So not for these, we didn't. Some things we did and some things we showed. Actually, for those we had, what is that name of the, Canopy. So we would just show it through the licensing that we already had. Let's see. Are the whiteboard voting topics available as an online survey for those patrons who may not physically visit the library, see the whiteboards, have the opportunity? No, this is just something to engage visitors who came in. So let's see. But that's something you could do if you wanted to do that. That'd be great. You clearly have a supportive dean. How do you recommend library staff who don't have a supportive administration? How do you build that relationship? Yes, I did have a supportive dean, because when I came on campus, he was the associate dean for student affairs, and he quickly wanted to work with me. So when he became the campus dean, he just continued that support. So if you don't have a supportive administration, how do you build that relationship? I don't know what not having a supportive administration means for you, but I would start with start talking, and or I would build relationships. I didn't go to the dean immediately. I just started working with people outside of the dean. It just happened to be that he came to me. But the first person I went to on campus when I started that position was not the dean. I went to TRIO programs, and they did the talking for me, if that makes sense. So they did the talking for me. People would find out that we were working together and how well that was going, and then everybody would kind of, who doesn't want to be part of something that's be given an impact? So that's how I work. So start working with collaborating. Again, I'm not concerned about who doesn't want to work with me. I'm concerned about who wants to work with me. And I forge those relationships, and oftentimes people will come around. And if they don't, I mean, why wouldn't they? It'd make them look good. That's what I say. Let's see. It's getting to be more questions. I think I might be skipping questions, so I'm not. I don't mean to. In a time of continuing pandemic, what thoughts do you have about adapting these great ideas? Thank you. Ideas and events to social distancing online. You know, this is something I've been thinking about, Holly, and I don't have an answer for you, because the library that I'm going to right now is a lot bigger than the library where I was. So one of the things I was thinking about just last night, if I wanted people to vote, I'm still thinking about, this is a new idea, but you guys take it and run and tell me what you think. Instead of putting markers out for people to vote, buy little magnets and put stickies put those little circle stickies on there, and let people vote in those and use those. I mean, hopefully they'll just pick one up and put their vote under the thing. And then those are easily, like, you can spray Lysol on them or something. But that's just a real quick, that's something I literally just thought about this morning. I was trying to figure out, how can I get students to engage in the library if I wanted them to get feedback, but they don't have to touch a marker, because a lot of the high touch things. But that's some things. Some things will just have to go away in terms of teas and things like that. But I think this is an opportunity for us to think about that. And I don't have a lot of answers right now, because I'm starting a new position and a lot of fish to fry. As we recognize that not every librarian wants to do the work of decolonizing or defeating white supremacy, what do we do with knowing that? Again, just accept and move on. Well, you don't have to accept it, but I think you should move on. And hopefully, again, you can share with them information, but you know, it's that, I hate to sound horse to water. Our goal is to move forward, people who want to move forward, and hopefully they'll come along. But it's not my goal to remind people. For me as an African American, I can say this, it's not for me to have to keep reminding people that I'm a human. I'm not gonna put myself in the exhausting position of reminding someone that I'm a human and should be treated as such. So that's my answer for that. I will not be, that's exhausting and disrespectful. I will leave my information. How can you be reached? I will leave my information here. Let me put my email in. I don't have my email for my new position yet, so this is fine. I put it in my email there. What do you do if you have a director who isn't supportive of initiatives like this? At the risk of sounding rebellious, I do it anyway. That's what I've been doing. A lot of stuff I just kind of did. I was at a small academic library, so I just did a lot of stuff, and I didn't have a leader. So there was no formal leader. So, and the thing about it is, well, I didn't have there was no formal channel for me to quote unquote ask permission. but I knew that things needed to be done and I had this budget. And so I just did it. Is there a problem? Not anymore, but we just created the food zone. And so because there was a problem with student eating in the no food zone, but they were mandated that that's what they wanted to do because we had become the de facto student center, and that's why we created a food zone, which had just opened and then the pandemic hit. So there's that. So I think our goal was to meet that mandate, but the reason that was there was because people were eating, and we had this legacy policies that said that there was no food allowed in the library. And so we just decided to change the policy and create a place for them to eat. And then the pandemic hit. Let's see. What would you say to those who say they don't have the time to do some of the programming you've done? A lot of the things we did, no one was staying late. We did not kill ourselves. A lot of the things required a little bit of planning, and we had students who helped. So we, the people that we did have in the library who could help, we asked them, we had them do some of that work. So we did do a lot of programming. I felt we made it was, how can I say this? We don't do a lot of teaching because we didn't have a lot of librarians in our so know this, the context of how we did this programming. A lot of the programming we did was because we didn't have the labor to do hardcore information literacy outreach. And so we had to do something else, because if we had pushed our information literacy outreach the way a lot of campuses often think about it, we would never be in the library and we could do nothing else, and that just wasn't gonna fly. And so what we did was we focused on outreach as a methodology for information literacy. So that's how our time kind of pivots. So keep that in mind. Whereas a lot of people would say, I gotta teach a lot, I'm always in the classroom. We didn't have that opportunity, because if we were always in the classroom, the library would we would not be in there. Nothing else would get done. And so we weren't pushing information literacy. We were pushing outreach. Outreach was our methodology through information literacy and things like that, to get people in the library and then engage with us that way. So we had book of librarian services and things like that too. Let's see. Okay.
I'm respectful of your time. I know it is 11, but
Right.
in a presentation at 11, but I want to be respectful of your time too.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. There's another one at 11, right?
11:15. So
11:15. Okay, I'll take a couple more questions. How do you foresee dealing with putting in place some physical barriers and increasing? I'm not sure what you're asking. I mean, how do you foresee dealing with putting in place? I need a little bit more information about your question there. I mean, these are safety measures, so I'm not sure what you're asking in terms of dealing with putting in place physical barriers. I think, we're online. So one thing I want to say here is we have been ready for this. Libraries have been ready for a pandemic for at least 25 years. We weren't necessarily thinking we're preparing for a pandemic, but we have these services, and we really need to start thinking about libraries more than just our buildings, and being so tied to the buildings that we get nervous if the building is compromised in some sort of way, and thinking, oh, there's no library. There's lots of ways we can connect with our users and not necessarily see them like we have been used to seeing them. So one thing I've learned through a community of practice, community I practice that I work with, K-Pop Collective, I have worked with students who live in Japan, who live in California, who live in Virginia. I have lived in none of these places. And they did the work that we asked them to do, and they were excited about it. So you don't have to be. So if we perceive, what if we looked at our users through as communities of practice? So I want you to think about that. And I think your question might be, being concerned about putting sneeze guards and have that distance between the patrons. But we've been prepared to work virtually for a long time. But I think we've been thinking about the library as a building for so long, and privileging that concept that now we find ourselves in this uncomfortable position. I'm not uncomfortable because I've always seen the library as more than a building. It's a concept, and really people make libraries run. So whether I'm in the building or not, this is clearly proven that we can make libraries work, whether we're in the building or not.
And I want to make sure we get this question answered. The question is, I'm looking to recruit young African-American men and women into our profession. Any advice?
I purposely didn't answer that question because that question goes beyond a soundbite. So if that's something you want to ask me or follow with me, that's okay.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, that's okay.
I didn't hear that we.
There's lots of literature on best practices for recruiting people of color, Black people to the profession. I think the first thing we need to do is show people that we're in the profession. But there's problems with that because our numbers have gone down in the last 40 years and 30 years instead of gone up. So, and we need to be able to show what we do, what we truly do. People still don't know what we do in librarianship. And you know, there's a real issue of, is it fair? People have been asking, is it fair for you to bring people into the profession when BIPOC are treated so poorly? So that's something you want to consider. How transparent you're going to be about the nature of the systems in play for people coming into the field who are of color. I love talking with you more about that though, offline.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were speaking directly to me. We can move on to another question if you have.
That's fine. One more. Do y'all find that academics are disrespected by administration and academic faculty? Well, my low morale studies show that there's a issue between campus administration and library administrations and librarians. So not so much academic faculty, although it came out a little bit, but not a lot. But it really, a lot of people who are dealing with low morale find themselves being disrespected and abused by campus administrators and more often library administration. And that's been consistent through all items. How do I advertise my programs throughout campus? I put it on our website. We have a visual communication system, and I would make slides for that would go out into the campus. I had what I call a captive publication. So when people used our facilities, they could not help but to see what we were doing as they stared ahead. I would put signs out around the library. We have social media on Instagram, and so we'll post that. So those were some of the major areas. Then I would send emails out on the day of the event, and I would actually invite people on campus. Hey, we're doing this today, come in. A lot of people forget to invite people on campus through an email. So I'll start doing that. Oh, well, I don't see those as barriers. How will it make you feel to have to create barriers, then tear them down? I don't see a shield as a barrier. So it doesn't make me feel, it doesn't make me feel anything because I don't see a shield as a barrier. In this case, because I know what it's there for. And my communication style is what creates transparency and relationship, not a screen. Let's see. How might diverse library programming translate the digital programming with the potential for students to not return in the program? I don't see a difference here. I think it just depends on what you want to offer and how you're going to do it. So if I decided I was like, so a lot of things are digital already. So I would promote things on the social media the same way. Yeah, I haven't really, yeah. It depends on what that means for you, what you're able to do. So again, a lot of these questions are coming from an idea of, if we're not in the building, that means I feel like a lot of the questions about concerning for programming, if we're not in the building, that means we can't create a relationship. And I want y'all to be thinking about ideas of I want y'all to be thinking about communities of practice. A lot of these questions about how are we going to do things in the digital sphere have to do with communities of practice and how you perceive what connection means for the people on the other side of this relationship. So I'm gonna leave that there because a lot of these things are second nature to me, probably because I've been working on a community of practice for a long time, and I don't perceive these things as inherent barriers. I think it's about pivoting to, you still have a person on the other side to whom you're going to connect, and they have skill sets too, and finding out what it is they want and what it is they're interested in. And so a lot of these things with community of practice going to connect with what they need, what they're interested in, what they bring to the table too. So start thinking about what it is that they bring to the table that you can leverage in your programming. So that's going to depend on your user base. So I'm gonna leave that larger concern there. This is about perhaps seeing things through lenses of communities of practice. And that means you're gonna start thinking about what the users are bringing to the table too. A lot of times when we create programming, we're thinking about the skills that we have and what they want, what we want them to have, what we want them to have when they leave the library. For this, we're going to have to think about what they're bringing to the table themselves. Do they have the skill set to do some of these things? Or how comfortable are they? Do they want to even engage that way? And in what way? Do they just want to look at pictures? Do they want certain types of things? You're going to have to find that information out. And that is kind of through the community of practice lens. They're going to bring things too. It's not going to kind of be like the one-way thing. It's going to be more of a two-way. Jocelyn, I think that'll be my last question because I think the next person starts in 4 minutes.
Yep, absolutely. Just thank you so much. Wow, it really gave us a lot to think about. Attendees, this presentation will be recorded and shared through a link. And Kaetrena, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. There was a question on the side here. Whoever asked that question, if you'd like to send me an email, let me know and I'll get to your questions. You can always email me anytime. Sorry I wasn't able to get to all the questions, but thank you so much for your time and your engagement today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you too.
Y'all take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.